Welcome everybody. My name is Paul Farrell. I'm the chairman of the Bobby Jones and Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation. I'd like to welcome you all here today to this important occasion for the Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation and the Bobby Jones family. Today we officially launch the Bobby Jones CSF Foundation. First, I'd like to acknowledge a number of people who are here with us today. We have some special guests here today. We have Mr. Charlie Harrison. We have Alexa Pano. DeWitt Weaver. Marty Elgerson, and Dr. Linton Hopkins. We also have two members here from the Georgia State Golf Association from their adaptive golf program, Mr. Bob Thibodeau and Tom Hartzell. We will also have here Dr. Ian Hager, who's formerly of the Children's Hospital of Georgia, who will be moving to the Medical City Children's Hospital in Dallas, along with Ricky Wisniewski, who's been one of our supporters and our golfers for the Bobby Jones Classic that will be playing on Monday, who both will be available to answer questions if anyone has any about Chiari and Syringomyelia. I'm also pleased to have members of our foundation who are able to join us today. We'll start with the Bobby Jones Society, which is our board of trustees. We have Mr. Mike McCullough from Chicago. He's our former chairman of the board of trustees and now our vice chairman. We have Kate Laird from Atlanta. We have Walker Westbrook from Nashville. And Cody Laird, also from Atlanta. In addition, we have members from our board of directors here. As I mentioned, I am the chairman of the organization. I think we have here our Vice Chairman, James Raines. James is a professor at Georgia Tech University. I don't know.
He's MIA.
I know he's coming. That's why I thought he might be here. We also have Miss Lori Watson, who you'll hear from in a little bit. Lori, along with myself and three other members or former members of our board of directors, were the founders of CSF back in 2007. We have Pam Fenner from Richmond, Virginia. We have Marina White from Atlanta. I don't think Kim Dawson is here. He will be here. He will be here also. Kim was the producer of the Bobby Jones movie, Stroke of Genius. He's on our board of directors now. We have Dr. Catherine Lowen from Plainville, New York. As you'll learn about Catherine, she is actually a veterinarian who is a specialist in Chiari and dogs and has been very valuable to our organization. And we also have Dr. Bob Jones IV from Atlanta, Georgia. In addition to Dr. Jones, there are other members of the Jones family who are here. It is my pleasure now to introduce Robert Jones Black to share the family's thoughts on the launch of the Bobby Jones Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to read. I prefer just running my mouth and talking. Those of you who know me, but I'm going to read today. Being third generation, born in 1975. I never met my great-grandfather, Bobby Jones. I only know him from the books and movies and the stories within the family. My aunt, Mary Black, who is back there, give a quick wave there, Mary. She provided us today her recollection and her perspective of Bub. The name Bobby Jones was called by his grandchildren, and 3 of the grandchildren are here, which we already know, but Ann Laird, Bob Jones IV, and then again Mary. So this following was written by Mary Black. I arrived on this earth about the time Bub was diagnosed with syringomyelia, and thus as I grew up, I watched the disease take over his body, slowly and hideously. My first recollection was Bub with his braces, big, cumbersome braces attached to his shoes. Then the braces were accompanied by the canes. I didn't know enough then to think anything other than this was just Bub, because he never complained, at least not in my presence. I didn't understand as a child that this was a disease. When Bub would come home from his law office, and with heavy feet and slow, careful progression, he would find his way to the elevator in their home. As soon as the door closed, I would scamper up the stairs to his bedroom and stand at the elevator door waiting for it to open, and greet him with a giggle and he with a smile. He then would remove the heavy braces, make his way to what we referred to as the inner sanctum of the bedroom, and there he would settle down in his comfortable chair and would enjoy his 3 fingers of bourbon and a cigarette or 2. As he got older, this routine got harder. He had braces made for his hands so that he could essentially sign things, hold eating utensils, glasses, and his cigarettes, which were now lined up on his table with filters, not for health reasons, but for easy holding. The leg braces and canes eventually became useless, and Bub was forced into a wheelchair. I must at this point give my thanks to the young men from Georgia Tech who volunteered to come help Bub. They bathed him, dressed him, shaved him, essentially addressing all of his personal needs. They were gracious and humble, and they thanked both Bub and my grandmother for the opportunity to care for him. As I grew older, I began to appreciate the wisdom of my grandfather and often thought of him as an oracle, sitting in his chair, draped in a white blanket, speaking in what appeared to be as deep profundity. He always, for his entire life, sought to gain knowledge and learn. We know of all of his degrees from Georgia Tech, Harvard, and Emory, but in later life, when incapacitated, he still sought knowledge. He read the dictionary every day, would find a word that appealed to his curiosity, and within a short amount of time, would know the history of the word, its origin, how it is used, and anything one can learn about a single word. I know this because I had to hear about all of these words. Bub gave all of his grandchildren the book, The Elements of Style, and told us to read it. He had little tolerance for children until they could speak in complete sentences, and thereby wanted those sentences to be grammatically correct. I'm going to break from Mary real quick and say that I probably still would not be able to talk to Bub. Back to Mary. I don't want to leave you with the impression that my grandfather was a cold, stoic man who had no love or warmth for his grandchildren. When I was 16, he presented me with the first 6 tickets, that's front row center, that went on sale for the Beatles concert at Fulton County Stadium, and a limo with his personal driver to take 6 overly hormonal and terribly hyped up 16-year-olds to the concert of a lifetime. Nothing slipped by this man. There are many out there who've written books about all of my grandfather's accomplishments in golf. I personally would struggle to tell you which championship he won, on what day, and what course. But I can with certainty and adoration tell you that this man made the best of his life as he lived and truly lived up to his words, playing the ball where it lies. He was a man of integrity and wisdom who faced every challenge that life threw at him with grace, dignity, and dogged determination. For many years, our family has been trying to start a foundation to honor our grandfather's legacy. In the 70 years since he was diagnosed with syringomyelia, I'm sure there have been huge improvements in the treatment of this disease, but there are still many affected and sadly more to come. By lending our grandfather's name to the Chiari Syringomyelia Foundation, we can only hope that this will open doors to much more funding for increasing awareness, for more research, and for finding a cure. Because his life taught us anything is possible. Thank you.
Who's next?
And now we will have Dr. Bob Jones IV come up.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Bob.
Well read.
Yeah. No reading on this guy.
Even better written. Even better written. So, the slogan for the Bobby Jones Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation is "Anything is possible." And it's a remarkable slogan when you think about it. It's short, sweet, to the point, and it really encapsulates very, very strongly the way that Robert Tyre Jones Jr. lived his life. But the question that's always sort of stuck in my mind is, how did he get to be that way? What was the genesis of that attitude that he had in his life? And I think to fully understand that, there's a person that we don't really talk about that much, but that we need to know about. Her name was Clara Merrick Thomas Jones, and that was his mother. She was a ferocious person with eyes that could just cut right into the very center of your soul. She was a strong-willed person who was very committed to learning, who was very committed to the English language, and was no stranger to tragedy herself, having a baby boy named Bailey who was born literally 1 year to the day prior to Robert Tyre Jones Jr., and who died in infancy. And while she stood over her little son's grave, she was actually pregnant with the man who would become the person who we honor with this foundation. She was deeply, deeply committed to learning. She loved wordplay, very, very forceful kind of individual. When Bub was growing up and he decided he wanted to play competitive golf, that was important. That was an important thing to her. It was important to his father, but it was also important that he pursue education, because as she always believed, anything was certainly possible, and Bobby Jones, as far as she was concerned, could accomplish whatever he wanted to do. Well, he struggled for a while in golf, but in 1923 he broke through, and after he broke through, he went on a tear like the world of golf has never ever seen, probably before or since, with the possible exception of the era of Tiger Woods. From the period of 1923 to 1930, he won 13 national championships, 4 United States Opens, 5 United States Amateurs. He still, to this day, holds the record for most United States Golf Association titles held, which is an unbelievable thing. He won 3 British Opens and 1 British Amateur, but there were 2 capstones to his career. The first was in 1926, when he became the first man to win the double, both Open Championships of the United States and Great Britain in the same year. And then finally in 1930, he capped it by winning the Grand Slam of golf. All 4 major championships in the same calendar year. The British Open at St. Andrews, the British Amateur at St. Andrews, the British Open at Hoylake, the US Open at Interlaken, and finally capping it off at the US Amateur in Marion. Following that, because anything was possible, he decided he wanted to retire from competitive golf and start to make his mark in his profession of law, and also make a mark on the game of golf through writing, through doing instructional films, and also for starting a golf club, the Augusta National Golf Club, which in addition to being one of the great inland golf courses of the world, is also the home of the Masters tournament. Why? Because anything is possible. What he didn't know while doing all of this was that his greatest battle, his greatest challenge, was staring him straight in the face, and he never knew it. Because in 1929, in the summer, a bolt of lightning had struck the clubhouse at Eastlake when he was running in to get away from an oncoming thunderstorm. And the chimney shattered and it hit him in the neck. And what he did not know at that moment was that at that very moment, he was a dead man. Because at that very moment, a fluid-filled syrinx had formed in his neck that would later become the syringomyelia that would ultimately paralyze him and ultimately, many years later, claim his life. Now, how do you deal with something like that? If you're a person, an ordinary person, like probably you and me, you might be inclined to self-pity. But that wasn't the way he was. Because to him, anything was possible. And insofar as it was possible, he wanted to continue to live his day in, day out life as much as he possibly could as a normal person. And so he did. Even having to deal with that very difficult night when he had finally gotten to the point where he could no longer use his legs, and he had a dream during the night that he had somehow been healed and was now able to walk. And he was so excited that he rolled out of bed and crashed to the floor and could not even get up, and had to wait for the butler to come in the morning to be able to help get him back into the bed. But do you face it with self-pity? Most people would. I probably would. And he did not. And he did not. Because anything indeed is possible. Ultimately, syringomyelia, actually an aneurysm, would claim him in December of 1971. And at the end of this incredible life, where he had seen, as Herbert Warren Wind would say, the best that life had to offer, and bore it with grace and bore with equal dignity just about the worst, at the end of this, his final words say it all. Is this a person whose final words were, "What a horrible lot I've been given in life"? No. His final words were, "If this is what it's like to die, it's beautiful." And that is the ultimate character of the man. That is the ultimate character of a man who knew deep down that in any circumstance, anything is truly possible. We are honored as a family to be partnering now with what is now the Bobby Jones Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation. We are so thrilled. Of course, we've known you guys forever, and we would, at this time at least, like to give just a little token of our support to the foundation. Dorothy, this is on behalf of the Bobby Jones family.
Thank you so much. This is great. Okay, I'm moved.
Bob just mentioned how long we've known each other, and we were discussing earlier as we were getting set up for this. Monday is our Bobby Jones Classic for the Bobby Jones CSF Foundation. In 2001, we began the plans for that. It took a good 9-10 years for it to actually get off the ground. We had a meeting down here in Atlanta, myself, Dorothy, Bob the Fourth, Mike McCula, and Lori, to lay the groundwork for that. And now it's become one of our most successful fundraisers, and it will continue to be so. Moving on with this program, you're probably sitting there saying to yourself, so what is Chiari and what is syringomyelia? Lori Watson, one of our board members, is going to come up and give a little explanation of that. And Lori will explain her connection to the foundation.
Hi. I think it's kind of an inside joke on me by you guys that I always follow Dr. Jones, who's such an eloquent speaker. And it's not fair. But nor is it fair that I am charged, I'm not a doctor, with describing Chiari and syringomyelia. So forgive me to the doctors in the audience, but I'm going to do my best. I like to explain Chiari and syringomyelia with something that most of us can understand quite well, and I start with a wine bottle. So if you can imagine a wine bottle with a cork in it, that is a Chiari. So all the liquid that's inside the bottle can't come out. It can't get out of the cork when you tip it. And if you can imagine the brain suspended above the wine bottle, needing that fluid to bathe at every heartbeat, you need that fluid, and it's stuck and it can't get through the cork. That is simply Chiari. It is the cerebellar tonsils, the cork, descending into the foramen magnum, which is the hole at the top of the bottle, stuck in there, preventing the fluid from coming out. If you can imagine with every heartbeat the kind of pain that somebody with a Chiari would go through, because the fluid wants to go somewhere. And again, I'm not a doctor, but the way I like to think about syringomyelia, in many cases, when that fluid has nowhere to go, kind of like a garden hose that is, cut off at the end, over time it wants to pop out the side. It wants to create a little bubble. It needs somewhere to go. And that little tumor is what we refer to as a syrinx. Now, whether or not that's the right pathophysiology, I'm sure it's not. We don't even know really if the pressure comes from the inside or the outside. We have very intelligent engineers working on that. But the bottom line is, it's just imagine a system that is full of pressure, and the pressure causes pain. It's a relatively, if not perfectly, normal brain in a space that has too much pressure for it. And so that is Chiari and syringomyelia. I hope that's helpful. The symptoms, I wish there was a textbook case for Chiari or syringomyelia, because we would be able to get diagnoses more quickly and it would not slip through the cracks for so many doctors. But there's no textbook case. Of course, headaches, pain, pressure. Who in this room who doesn't have Chiari hasn't had that? You go to your doctor, maybe you have some vision problems, but those are transient. Or maybe you have some strange eye movements called nystagmus, but that's also transient. Maybe you have some slipping when you're walking, but it doesn't last forever and you're not really sure. You have some tingling, you have all these strange symptoms that mimic so many other diseases, from migraines to MS to just having a bad day or working out too hard or whatever. And so it gets missed a lot. So from my perspective, my role, if you will, in the organization, my passion was to educate physicians so that Chiari was at least on their mind. To consider Chiari as a diagnosis when you have a patient who comes in repeatedly, and whatever you're trying for them for pain management and for exercise and PT isn't really helping, consider Chiari. The problem is with Chiari and syringomyelia, the only way to diagnose it is with an MRI. And so you're fighting insurance companies and dollars and all that stuff to actually get your doctor to order the MRI. So they have to be quite confident that they're not wasting money. So lots of symptoms for Chiari and syringomyelia. Some studies estimate it can take about 6 years to get a diagnosis. I mean, I think we know people who've taken much longer. For my son, we knew something was wrong right when he was born, and it still took us 2 years to get a diagnosis of relentless searching, which is why I'm involved. My son, my 20-year-old, who's doing great, has Chiari. Currently, CSF, now the CSF Bobby Jones Foundation, works with 50 major medical institutions in the U.S. We partner with people like St. Louis Children's Hospital. We have a $2.8 million research study to find the best surgical procedure for Chiari. How do you make that cork smaller or thinner to let the stuff, the liquid come around it, or make the cavity of the brain bigger to allow some space in there? This is the very first study of its kind. We're working with the NIH and the NINDS. We have independently completed over 700 common data elements that comprise this disease space, so that one doctor who's talking about Chiari and syringomyelia is saying the same thing as what another doctor is saying about Chiari and syringomyelia. That has actually been a very eye-opening, difficult, protracted project.
Can I just comment on that?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So we had 30 neurosurgeons, 30 world-class neurosurgeons in a room, and we put an MRI. It was our study to determine why we needed to do this, and we asked them to measure a Chiari on an MRI. So just how big is the cork, right? Because that's what we're talking about. There were 3 millimeters to 9 millimeters. written by different people. There was that big a difference. If you get surgery, right now the marker for getting surgery is 5 millimeters. It's the same, it was the same film. Some said 3, some said 9. How do you make a surgical determination if you don't have a standardization of how to measure it? And we took that on. It took us 2.5 years, but the National Institutes of Health now have that as the playbook for what to do. So, I'm sorry.
And even more complicated than that is the fact that measuring something, in a two-dimensional space is certainly not the best way to do it. We have 3D MRIs and cinema volumetric MRIs. So somebody with a 3 millimeter Chiari might be incredibly symptomatic, like our son was. And somebody might have a 22 millimeter Chiari and have no symptoms at all, because you can't imagine volume on a two-dimensional piece of paper. Okay, so it's just very complicated, and we're tackling all those issues, and now we have an amazing partner to tackle them as well. We have some studies that were published in the Journal of Neurosurgery, and we have a very robust educational program where we hold lectures across the country, internationally. And all these videos of what we learned and what we talk about are available free online for the people who access our new fabulous website. And we just want to say thank you all for partnering with us and being here and helping us continue on our journey. So
And I want to give you a metric on that. So we have over 400 videos on the site from all over. But what's really fascinating about it is they've been accessed over 3 million times by 194 countries in the world. So not only are we helping here in the United States, people are craving that information globally. Mm-hmm. So that program to me is probably
incredible.
One of the best things we do. So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Are you next?
I'm next.
And this is Dorothy.
No, Paul. Oh, you're Paul.
Are you next? Are you next?
Paul's next.
Okay, Paul's next. I'll give you a hug too.
Good job.
Thank you.
I'm now just going to give you a little history of the Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation that has led us now to our partnership with the Bobby Jones family and helped us form the Bobby Jones Chiari and Syringomyelia Foundation. CSF was founded on October 18, 2007. There were 5 of us who founded the organization, Lori being one of them. And the organization has grown dramatically over the last 10 years. We now have 8 board of director members, and we have a medical board that includes 22 voting members and 10 emeritus members from, as Lori mentioned, prestigious national and international medical institutions. Our board of trustees, as I mentioned before, we have a few members here, also includes our new chairman of the board of trustees, as we call the Bobby Jones Society. That gentleman is Adam Korn. He's a principal member at Goldman Sachs, and you met Mike McCullough earlier today. We have accomplished the approval of the Better Business Bureau and the GuideStar Platinum rating, and our medical information is now certified by Health on the Net, another prestigious organization. In addition to our research, education, and advocacy programs, we've also gotten much more involved in the game of golf, which has, of course, led us to the Jones family and our new organization. A couple of years back, we funded an engineering project at Georgia Tech University that actually won the capstone engineering competition, and it was a golf cart that enables a child a handicapped child to play golf. Presently, for myself, I play in a golf cart that is basically built for an adult. There's another model that you'll see Ian playing in later today as well, but they're basically for adults. So we funded a project at Georgia Tech that actually won the capstone competition, as I mentioned, and has now been patented And we've actually sold one to a family in Staten Island to allow their 12-year-old girl to play golf with her brothers. And it's a cart that's actually going to open the world of golf to a lot more children to enable them to play at a much younger age. I mentioned before when I was introducing our board members, I was giving you information on where they're from. We've always prided ourselves on being a national organization, and we do have board members from all over the country. More recently, we have developed an international following, as Dorothy mentioned, and we're also expanding our doctors' conferences to include both U.S. and international conferences. This July in Oslo, Norway, we're hosting the 6th or 7th biannual hydrodynamics symposium, which instead of focusing on doctors, we're focusing on engineers, physicists, and other biomedical technicians and academic people to basically explain not what Chiari and syringomyelia what they are, but basically why they affect the body the way they do. That gives a perspective more from the engineering side than from a medical side. So we've actually, the focus is to go worldwide, as Dorothy said, and we're really starting to move in that direction. I'm going to bring Dorothy up now, say a few more words, and the connection with the legacy of Bobby Jones.
So first of all, before I say what I wanted to say, I just want to, I look around the room and we have definitely people who are, I consider the family now, who we've known for many years. There are some new faces who I hope really become part of the family. Don't leave today and forget about it, because there's so much we have to do. And if you want to volunteer, if you want to learn more, call the office. We have a place for everyone. All right, I'll project now. So Bobby Jones, CSF, now has to live up to the legacy of Bobby Jones. And as a foundation, we, like Jones, begin our work with integrity. We start by playing the ball where it lies, where we are today. There's a lot of work to be done, but we need to keep focused on why we do this work. It's because there are families who suffer. There are children who need an earlier diagnosis. So the work is important, but why we do it is what we have to keep in our hearts. And we want to improve the life and quality of life and the treatment for so many families. And we're talking about 3 million people in the US alone. While we do this work, we're moving forward to the cure. And with the Jones family and CSF family working together, with your support, we can accomplish anything. Our lofty goals, the Bobby Jones, Chiari, and syringomyelia will see that anything is possible. So thank you all.